Hello? Hello? Please, I know you can hear us. We are trapped here in the spaces between worlds. It is a wonderful yet terrifying place, and only our voices escape. You can help us. You can let us in before we go mad.
A Dozen Plus One by Todd Christensen. Memorial Day, a time to cherish and remember the dead. I have a lot of remembering to do. I started off only having to buy a single red rose, then 2, then 3. However, the amount has grown over the years, until this year the number of roses is a dozen plus 1. I am a superstitious man, and this number makes me nervous. But tomorrow is the big day, and I doubt the number will change. I was at the flower shop the next morning when it opened. I went inside to make my purchase, a dozen plus 1, all of them deep red. I was picky about my roses and refused to buy them all in one pre-made bundle, annoying the florist as I took my time hand-selecting each rose of my bouquet, naming them in my head as I chose. I toyed with the idea of buying an extra rose, but tradition held me to what I needed right now, a dozen plus 1. Not all of them were perfect. Some were even chosen for their imperfections. These were the roses for my cherished dead. I drove out of town, keeping my truck a bit cooler than was comfortable. My flowers would not be allowed to wilt. Everything would be just the way I planned. After a couple of hours, I left the highway and turned onto a gravel road, slowly following its winding path through the forest. I passed the occasional cluster of trailers and tents. Most of the Memorial Day campers were awake and packing up. Their long weekend was over. Some of them smiled and waved as I passed by. I smiled and waved back. They didn't have a clue. I continued driving further up the mountain, until the road became no more than 2 hard-packed ruts. The intermittent mud holes forced me to put the truck into 4-wheel drive. Few ventured beyond this point. Then, just before reaching my own little private spot on the river, I saw a small tent pitched deep within the woods, practically invisible to the casual passerby. I was not the casual passerby. I scanned the surrounding area and didn't see a vehicle. Not too unusual, I thought. People often left their campsites unattended while they took a drive or made a supply run into town. Nevertheless, my internal radar kicked on, and I felt the familiar, comforting surge of adrenaline being released within my body. Who knows, maybe I should have bought that extra rose after all. No, that was wishful and reckless thinking. It was probably just a couple of kids, teen boys most likely, getting away for a weekend of drinking and smoking pot. This was not part of the plan. Today was about remembering the old memories, not creating new ones. I parked my truck out of sight from the main road and carried my bundle of roses like an infant to the water's edge. I made myself comfortable on the large flat boulder I had visited every Memorial Day for so many years. The rock extended just the right distance out into the river and had a nice big crack running through it. I jammed the rose stems into the gap. It held my bouquet upright so I could once again take my time hand-selecting each rose. My heart rate ticked up a few notches as I searched the roses for Annabelle. Beautiful Anne. Only the most perfect rose would do for my first. With trembling hands, I carefully pulled her from the others. I drew her to my nose and deeply inhaled her sweet fragrance. I smelled not the rose, but rather the mingled scent of her shampoo and the perfume she was wearing the night that I had visited her. My only regret? I had panicked and not taken my time, but that was understandable. She had been my first. Oh, beautiful Anne. I tossed her into the current of the river and watched her quickly float away. Gone, but never forgotten. I selected another rose. This time it was Selena, my second, and unlike Annabelle, I had taken my time with her. She had been so gorgeous, even in death. I had kept her around for a while, before burying her in the woods under a bright shining moon as fair as she. Dear Selena. I dropped her into the slower moving current next to the rock, so I could once again take my time and remember all of the wonderful things I had done to her before she was gone. My third rose was the least perfect rose of them all. Leah, still so pretty, although worn and weary. I never thought that I would go for a prostitute, but sometimes the urge is too much for a man to bear. Leah had been such easy pickings. Too young and naive, the street life had already gotten the best of her. I had been there for her, saving her from a life of heartache and misery. I made sure her death was absolute agony. Poor, exhausted Leah. The river took her away. Tabitha, my timid gazelle with charming eyes, such unusual eyes. I had been sure to be staring into them as I wrapped my hands around her slender neck and choked the life from her small body, watching with fascination as those charming eyes went blank. I tried to cut them out to save them, but cutting eyes out is not an easy task. I ruined them, but those charming eyes were still here, forever in my memories. I was searching for Mercedes when a small movement downriver caught my eye. I instinctively froze and watched as a woman walked out of the trees and down to the river's edge. My breathing stopped and blood rushed to my head. She was the most stunning woman that I had ever seen. I remained motionless as she set down a towel and a bar of soap and began stripping the clothes from her lithe, athletic body. The tent in the woods. Part of me just wanted to continue watching the show, but the predator in me already had a plan. I snatched up the remaining roses. Jumping to my feet, I began hollering as I turned left and right, frantically searching the area around me. Benji! Come here, Benji! I saw her stop just as she undid her bra. The look of comic surprise on her face as she crossed her arms in front of her breasts almost made me laugh. Instead, I faked the same amount of shock at seeing her. Oh dear, I'm sorry, ma'am," I said, modestly turning my back, allowing her time to put her clothes back on. After a few seconds, she hollered over the short distance. "It's all right. I didn't know anyone else was here." I turned and faced her, clutching my roses as I took a few paces forward, rambling on in fiend panic. "I'm so sorry. I lost my dog. Have you seen him? He's a little white Pomeranian. He's never run off like this. I bring him here with me every year to put roses in the river for my mother. This is where I spread her ashes. He was her dog. I promised her that I'd take care of him. I've never lost him. Benji, come here, Benji." "Whoa, calm down a second, sir. I'm sure he didn't go too far. I can help you look. Do you think you would come to a stranger?" she asked. I think so," I stammered. "I mean, probably a woman." I moved a couple steps closer. "He is more of a lady's dog. A man might scare him. Say, he might have smelled some food or something. Are you guys camped around here? Maybe just cooked some breakfast?" I studied her intently, looking for any signs of alarm in her eyes or posture, hoping I hadn't overplayed my hand, praying she took my intense gaze as a sign of concern for my dog. "My tent's just up the hill," she answered, "and I keep my food sealed and in a tree. Bears, you know." "My tent," she had said. "I keep my food sealed." She was alone, and apparently naive to the situation she now found herself in. Then, to my complete surprise, She bent down and scooped up her towel and bar of soap. Keeping the bar of soap in her left hand, she threw the towel over her shoulder and closed the distance between us, holding out her right hand as she said, "Let's start over. I'm sure we can find your dog. My name's Rebecca, by the way." Rebecca. My mind raced as I held out my own hand. This was not part of the plan. Should I make my move now? Is she really all alone? I pictured myself a year from now, pulling Rebecca from my bouquet. Stunning Rebecca. A girl who ensnares men with her beauty. A trap, my mind screamed, but I had already grasped her hand. Her grip seemed way too strong for an ordinary girl. I was caught off guard as she pulled me into her, jamming the bar of soap into my groin. I heard a strange, electrical zapping. At the same time, every muscle in my body spasmed. I felt as if 1,000 bees were stinging me beneath my skin. I pissed myself, falling to the ground like a sack of bricks. My bouquet of roses spilled out around me. I was vaguely aware of someone rushing out of the woods, pointing a scoped rifle at me. He hurriedly thrust it at Rebecca. "Cover him," he ordered. Then he was on top of me. Zip-tying my arms behind my back, he roughly pulled me to my feet. "Outstanding, Bex. Hell of a good job," he complimented the beautiful young woman, who now pointed a military-style rifle at my chest like she knew how to use it. "Stand down, Sergeant. The situation is under control, and after that little bit of fiction he just tried to pull on you, I have no doubt we've got our man." She lowered the rifle. "Did you see how many roses he let go, Lieutenant?" "Yeah, 4 of them," he responded as Rebecca slung the rifle on her shoulder and squatted to gather the remaining roses, counting them as she did. "That makes 13, sir. This creep is sicker than we thought." "Yeah, well, number 13 was the wrong girl. This bastard has no idea who he messed with. Don't worry, he'll talk. He'll tell us where they all are before it's over. 13 only means a lot more misery if he doesn't." I recovered enough to demand, "Hey, what's going on? Am I under arrest? I haven't done anything. I have my rights, you know." The lieutenant laughed. "Buddy, you don't get any rights. Not after what you did to all them girls. No one's ever going to see you again. And by the time we get through with you, you're going to wish you gave me the chance to put a bullet in your head. By the way, Bex, how'd you like that soap bar taser the boys in white coats conjured up for you?" "Fine, sir," Sergeant Rebecca replied. "Just fine."